Good afternoon, everyone. The topic of my presentation is bone physiology, hormonal and non-hormonal factors and their effects. I would like to thank moderator and resource faculty of today's seminar, Dr. Amit Vikram Shah, Department of Orthopedics. So the objectives of my presentation are to list hormones and their effects on bone physiology and to list non-hormonal factors that affect bone physiology. So before understanding these effects, we must know about bone remodeling. So bone remodeling, it is the continuous process of bone formation and bone resorption, and it is necessary for the renewal and repair of the bone throughout life. It has four phases. First one is quiescence phase. In quiescence phase, the bone is at rest, and when there is any micro damage in any part of the bone, then the osteoclasts are recruited to that part of the bone, and they cause resorption. That is, they cause the osteolysis or break in the that part of bone. So this is second stage resorption, and third stage is reversal. In reversal phase, the osteoclasts they undergo apoptosis, and instead of osteoblasts are recruited to that part of the bone. Then osteoblast they deposit organic matrix, which is called osteoid, in that microdamaged part of the bone. This stage is called formation. So osteoid is organic matrix which is not mineralized. So when this osteoid undergoes mineralization, it again forms the original bone, which is in quiescence phase. So most of the hormonal or non-hormonal factors, they play a role in this bone remodeling. Either they take part in bone formation or bone resorption. So these are the hormones, list of hormones: parathyroid hormone, vitamin D, estrogens or androgens, glucocorticoids, thyroid hormones, and growth hormone. And in non-hormonal factors, they are mechanical factors, mainly physical activity, diet, and some local factors. So this figure I want to show just for one thing. So we can see osteoblast here. These osteoblasts, they are formed from the osteoprogenitor cells. In the surface of these osteoblasts, there is one receptor. We can see here, this is LRP56, that is LDL receptor related protein 5 or 6. In this receptor binds the WNT proteins. This WNT, spherical pink colored molecule, this WNT binds to this receptor and causes the proliferation of osteoblast. And then these osteoblasts will deposit osteoid and help in bone formation. And this osteocyte, it produces one molecule, that is sclerostin. This sclerostin, it does not allow WNT protein to bind with this receptor, due to which osteoblasts, they cannot proliferate and they cannot form new osteoid and bone formation will be inhibited. So this sclerostin molecule is important in physical activities role in bone remodeling. So I want to show that. So this Utkarsh has already shown, and I would like to describe it now in brief. Pre-osteoclast, they change into osteoclast, but for that they require the help of osteoblasts. Osteoblasts, they produce two proteins. One is osteoprotein and next is rankle. Three proteins. One is rankle, next is MCSF and OPG. Rankle, it binds with rank of pre-osteoclast, and MCSF, it binds with its receptor on pre-osteoclast, due to which this changes into active osteoclast. Whereas osteoprotein, it does not allow rankle to bind with rank, due to which it inhibits the conversion of pre-osteoclast into osteoclast. So when this osteoclast is activated, it sends out the villus-like projections onto the bone surface. This is called ruffled membrane. And two things happen here. One is acid secretion, mainly lactic acid and citric acid. And next is lysosomes, they break down and they release the proteolytic enzymes. These enzymes, they break the organic matrix, whereas acids, they dissolve the mineral part of the bone, and thus bone resorption occurs. So hormones, they play a role in here. So PTH receptor and vitamin D receptor, they are present in osteoblast, and they cause increased in rankle and MCSF, whereas decreased osteoprotein. So again, in detail, this is the pre-osteoclast, and this is the rank, which is receptor, and this molecule is rankle, which binds with the rank, and due to which pre-osteoclast precursor they change into osteoclast, and thus bone resorption occurs. And but osteoprotein, this osteoprotein, which is secreted from osteoblast, does not allow rankle to bind with rank, and thus it inhibits bone formation, and thus it inhibits bone resorption. So there are three hormones which increase rankle and decrease OPG, due to which they will increase bone resorption. These hormones are parathyroid hormone, vitamin D, and glucocorticoids. Whereas estrogens, by increasing osteoprotein, it will inhibit bone resorption. So these are the effect of hormones on rankle or rank. So now one by one, each hormone's role in bone physiology. So this is parathyroid hormone's role. So when serum calcium it decreases, then it stimulates the calcium sensing receptor, due to which increased amount of parathyroid hormone secretion is secreted. It has direct effect on bone and kidney, and indirect effect on intestine. In bone, parathyroid hormone it increases the bone resorption and thus releases calcium and phosphate into the blood. In the kidney, it increases calcium reabsorption and decreases phosphate reabsorption, due to which ultimately it increases calcium reabsorption and increases phosphate excretion. In the kidney, it has indirect effect because from kidney, it activates the vitamin D, and this activated vitamin D acts on the intestine to increase calcium reabsorption and phosphate reabsorption. So the ultimate effect of the parathyroid hormone is it increases calcium and it decreases phosphate in the blood after its infusion. So this figure, right upper figure, it shows the how calcium regulates the secretion of parathyroid hormone. So we can see here that even a small amount of decrease in calcium will double or triple the concentration of parathyroid hormone. So this is the effect of estrogens. Estrogen, it acts on three cells: osteocyte, osteoblast, and osteoclast. On osteocytes, it causes decreased apoptosis. In osteoblasts, same effect. It decreases the apoptosis, oxidative stress, and NFKB activity, and thus it increases it maintains the bone formation. And whereas in osteoclast, it has the opposite effect to that it has on osteocyte and osteoblast. That is causes apoptosis and rankle-induced differentiation of pre-osteoclast into osteoclast. So ultimate effect of estrogen is decreased bone resorption and maintenance of bone formation. So glucocorticoids it act on the osteocyte, it increases rankle and it increases sclerostin. So we can by increasing sclerostin, it causes bone formation. So how it causes, I will describe in mechanical factor. And by increasing rankle, it increases bone resorption. So ultimate effect of glucocorticoid is decreased bone formation and increased bone resorption. Physiological effect of glucocorticoids, they can be known from their excess effect. So these are the effect when glucocorticoids is more in concentration, but the physiological effect are also similar. So it has three direct effect: one, two, three. Three direct effect: one osteocyte, osteoblast, and osteoclast, and two indirect effect: this and this. So in osteocyte, it decreases the survival of osteocyte, and it decreases the osteoblast bone formation by different these effects: by decreasing sex steroids, by increasing parathyroid hormone, by decreasing growth factors, WNT, and survival proliferation. So it decreases osteoblast bone formation, whereas it increases osteoblast bone resorption by increasing rankle, decreasing OPG, and increasing survival of the osteoclasts. So ultimate effect is glucocorticoid induced osteoporosis. And in indirect effect, glucocorticoids they break down the collagen of the muscle and they increase the muscle wasting, due to which muscle loading will decrease. And this will produce decreased loading on the bone and will make the bone weak. In the intestine and kidney, glucocorticoids they cause the decreased calcium reabsorption. So thyroid hormone's concentration is directly proportional to the bone turnover. Bone turnover means bone formation and bone resorption. So if low thyroid hormones is there, then low bone turnover. It means bone formation and bone resorption both will be low, but bone resorption is still higher than bone formation. When thyroid hormones is more in concentration, then there will be high bone turnover. It means high bone formation and bone resorption, but still bone resorption is greater than bone formation. So from this fact, we know that both hypothyroidism and hyperthyroidism will cause osteoporosis. So growth hormone is very important in the skeleton. So just let's focus on its effect on bone. Growth hormone, it has direct effect on bone as well as it has indirect effect. Growth hormone, it increases insulin-like growth factor 1 from the liver, and this insulin-like growth factor 1, it acts on the bone. So it has direct and indirect effect. And in bone, it increases the protein synthesis by increasing amino acid uptake and by increasing DNA and RNA synthesis. It also increases the number as well as size of osteogenic and chondrocytic cells. And third effect is it causes the conversion of chondrocytic cells into osteogenic cells. So growth hormones effect can be described in two ways. One is on length and next on thickness. So when you talk about length, this is epiphysis, this is metaphysis, and between them is growth plate. So growth hormone acts on this growth plate. It increases the deposition of cartilage in this growth plate, and this cartilage is changed into new bone. That's why growth hormone, it increases the length of the bones. But as this cartilage gets used up by late adolescence, then the epiphysis, they fuse with the shaft of the bone, and growth hormone no longer can increase the length of the bones. But when you see thickness under the periosteum of the flat bones like skull bones, jaw bones, growth hormone, it acts on the osteoblasts, and these osteoblasts, they produce osteoid under the periosteum and thus increase the thickness of the bones. So there are no epiphyses here in the flat bones or these bones like skull or jaw. That's why growth hormone, it continues to increase the thickness of the bone throughout life. Now, non-hormonal factors, there are certain non-hormonal factors in addition to hormones which affect on the bone remodeling. One is dietary factors. Of course, diet will have very important role in the strengthening of the bones. Calcium-rich foods, they will strengthen the bone, and malnutrition, that will cause osteoporosis. So age is next thing. With aging, the replicability or proliferation capacity of the osteogenic cells, that will decrease. And next is indirect effect. As the age increases, physical activity decreases, and physical activity, if decreased, that will negatively impact the bone physiology. So this is the mechanical factors. You can see two types of people here. So in the left side, so athletes, they will have stronger bones. It is because they have increased loading or stress on their bones. Whereas in the right picture, you can see the right bone, which is there is leg cast and inactive right leg. So if it continues after a few weeks, 30% of the bone will be decalcified. So this shows the importance of the physical activity. So now let's learn how physical activity helps in bone formation. When this decreased loading, it is sensed by mechanosensors, that is osteocyte. Osteocyte acts as mechanosensor. This senses decreased loading, and because of which, this osteocyte will produce sclerostin. As I said in the introductory part, this sclerostin does not allow WNT to bind to LRP56, and thus osteoblast cannot proliferate, and there will be decreased bone formation. So when there is increased loading or increased stress, as in athletes, there will be decreased production of sclerostin, because of which WNT proteins, they can bind to this receptor, they can cause osteoblast proliferation, and there will be increased bone formation. So in addition to these, there are certain local factors in the bone itself. These are growth factors and cytokines. These growth factors, they stimulate bone formation like bone morphogenetic proteins, insulin-like growth factor, transforming growth factor beta. Whereas these growth factors, they stimulate bone desorption. They are tumor necrosis factor TNF, epidermal growth factor MCSF, and GM-CSF, that is granulocyte macrophage covalent stimulating factor. There are certain cytokines which stimulate bone formation like interleukin 4, 13, OPG, and interferon. Whereas there are certain cytokines that stimulate bone desorption. They are interleukin 1, 6, 8, and 11, and prostaglandin E1 and E2. So this is the summary of my presentation. There are different hormones which act on these things, and they either cause bone formation or bone desorption. So I would like to conclude by saying that two types of factors, that is hormonal and non-hormonal factors, they act on three types of cells: osteoblast, osteocyte, and osteoclast, and they produce two effects, that is either bone formation or bone desorption. So thank you. These are my references.